The city's skyline shimmered under the twilight, the golden glow of streetlights reflecting off the river like scattered diamonds. At the center of it all stood the old iron bridge, a place that had witnessed countless stories, some whispered, some shouted, most forgotten. Tonight, it would witness another story, one that would consume two hearts in ways they hadn't anticipated. Elena leaned against the cold metal railing, the wind tugging at her hair, her eyes tracing the river's currents below. She wasn't supposed to be here. She had a meeting to attend, emails to send, a life that demanded responsibility. Yet something had drawn her, an invisible force urging her toward this very bridge. She felt alive here, unburdened, as though the city's chaos fell away with each gust of wind. Then she heard footsteps, deliberate and confident. Her heart skipped. He emerged from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence commanding yet strangely familiar. Damien. She hadn't seen him in years, not since the brief, electric summer in Paris when passion had burned brighter than the sun and cooler than the Seine at night. And now, standing before her, the same fire smoldered in his dark eyes, a fire that both terrified and thrilled her. "Elena," he said softly, his voice carrying across the quiet bridge. It was warm, deep, intoxicating. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I needed air," she replied, though her voice trembled slightly. Every instinct screamed at her to step back, to resist. But the pull between them was magnetic, unavoidable. He closed the distance, the space between them charged, like the bridge itself had absorbed their past and now amplified it. Damien's hand brushed against hers, not the tentative touch of a friend, but the claiming touch of someone who remembered every curve, every sigh, every stolen moment of intimacy. "You look incredible," he murmured, and the air around them seemed to thicken. Her pulse raced, each beat echoing in her ears. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, though the words lacked conviction. She wanted to run, yet her feet refused to obey. "Then stay for a moment," he said, capturing her hands in his. His touch was warm, insistent, grounding and igniting all at once. "Just a moment. Let me remember you." Elena's breath hitched as he leaned closer. The wind tangled their hair together, and suddenly the world beyond the bridge vanished. Emails, meetings, obligations, all meaningless against the storm brewing between them. Her fingers traced the lines of his face, committing them to memory once more. "You haven't changed," she said, though her lips trembled. "Still, dangerous." Damien smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. "Dangerous? Maybe. But you loved it once, didn't you?" She wanted to deny it, to turn and escape the temptation, but as their faces inched closer, the pull became irresistible. Her lips barely brushed his, a whisper of a kiss that carried years of longing and unspoken desire. The bridge seemed to respond, metal creaking softly, the river below sighing in rhythm with their hearts. Passion wasn't polite. It wasn't patient. And tonight, it didn't wait. Damien's hand slid to her waist, pulling her against him with a hunger that matched her own. Elena melted into him, surrendering to the intoxicating blend of memory and desire, the ache that had never truly left her heart. They broke apart only when the cold night air reminded them of reality, their foreheads resting together, breaths mingling. This is crazy," Elena whispered. "Maybe," Damien admitted, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "But some things are worth being crazy for." And as the city lights danced across the river, casting their reflections in the water below, they both knew this was only the beginning. The bridge had become their confession, their battlefield, their haven. And tonight, it would not let them go. The city below seemed distant now, just a backdrop to the world they had carved for themselves on the bridge. Elena's fingers trembled slightly as Damien's hand remained firm around hers, anchoring her in place while igniting every nerve in her body. The breeze tugged at her hair, but she barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on the man who had haunted her dreams for years. "You always know how to appear at the right moment," she said, trying to mask the longing in her voice with playful defiance. Damien chuckled softly, leaning in until his lips hovered just above hers. "I've always been a master of timing," he said, his eyes dark with mischief and something deeper, something she had feared to name. "And I've always been a master at finding what I want." Her breath caught. She had known him once, in another city, another life, yet the memory of that summer, the laughter, the heat, the reckless passion rushed back in vivid waves. She felt herself drawn to him, a moth to a flame, despite every rational part of her mind screaming for restraint. "Damien," she whispered, a warning, a plea, a confession all wrapped into one word. He closed the gap, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was slow, deliberate, and searing. Elena's knees nearly gave way, her body responding to his touch with a hunger she thought had long since faded. It was as if time itself had folded, allowing the past and present to collide in a perfect storm of desire. Damien's hand slid down her back, tugging her closer, as if trying to erase the years they had spent apart. Every inch of her skin seemed to come alive under his touch, and Elena felt a shiver run through her, not from the night air, but from the intensity of their reunion. "I've missed you," he murmured against her lips, and the confession struck her harder than any words could have. I missed you too," she admitted, her voice barely audible. She didn't want to, but the truth spilled out. She had tried to move on, to bury the memories, but the moment he was near, every suppressed feeling surged back with a force she could no longer deny. Their kiss deepened, urgent and unrelenting. The bridge beneath them seemed to vibrate with their energy, the metal groaning as though it understood the storm of emotion unfolding above the river. Elena's hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer as her body pressed against his, craving the heat and familiarity of him. They broke apart only to catch their breath, foreheads touching, hearts hammering in sync. "We shouldn't," she began, but Damien silenced her with a finger to her lips. "Shouldn't what?" he asked, a teasing smile tugging at his lips. "Feel this? Want this? Careless warnings have never stopped us before." She bit her lip, torn between desire and caution. The bridge was their secret, a place away from judgment and expectation, yet the world beyond it demanded responsibility, demanded restraint. And still, every instinct screamed to throw caution to the wind and surrender to the fire burning between them. Damien's gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, the teasing edge vanished. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing lightly over her cheek. "Elena, no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, I don't want to fight this. Not tonight. Not with you." The sincerity in his voice shattered whatever resistance remained. Elena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not of sadness, but of relief, longing, and overwhelming desire. She leaned into him, letting the world fall away as they stood suspended between the past and what might come. "Then don't," she whispered, her hands resting against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat. For a long moment, they simply held each other, two souls tethered by memory, desire, and a connection that refused to be denied. The city hummed quietly beneath them, oblivious to the intensity of what was unfolding above. And then, with a shared glance that spoke volumes, they stepped closer again, surrendering to the unspoken promise that this night this bridge would become their own private world, where passion ruled and nothing else mattered. The river flowed beneath them, the city lights glimmered, and the air between them crackled with an energy that neither time nor distance could diminish. They were together again, and for Elena and Damien, nothing else existed beyond the bridge. The night air on the bridge had grown colder, but neither Elena nor Damien seemed to notice. Their bodies were close, their hearts racing in sync, a dangerous rhythm that threatened to consume them entirely. Every brush of his fingers against her skin sent shivers down her spine, every whisper of his voice made her breath catch. Damien's hand slid along her arms, tracing the contours with a careful intensity. "Do you remember," he murmured, "that night in Paris? The rain, the rooftop, the way you laughed." Elena closed her eyes, the memory flooding back. She could feel the warmth of that night as if it had never left her, the reckless abandon, the way the world had existed only for the two of them. She opened her eyes and met his gaze, realizing that the fire that had burned then had never truly faded. "I remember," she whispered, her voice soft, almost vulnerable. "I've never forgotten." His lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Good. Because I've been waiting for this moment, waiting for you." His hands tightened around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and the electricity between them ignited anew. Elena's pulse quickened. She wanted to resist, to remind herself that this was dangerous, impulsive, that the world outside the bridge demanded responsibility. But the bridge was their sanctuary tonight, a place where rules no longer applied, where desire was allowed to take control. And she wanted him, every part of him, every memory, every stolen second. Damien leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her ear. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. Elena swallowed hard, her body betraying her mind. "Yes," she breathed, though a tiny part of her still hesitated. "That's all I need." His lips claimed hers, and this kiss was different, hungrier, deeper, more urgent than any before. Elena's hands flew to his chest, feeling the hard strength beneath his shirt, and she shivered at the intensity of his touch. They moved together along the bridge, the metal beneath their feet groaning softly as if echoing their rising passion. Damien pressed her against the railing, his hands exploring the curve of her back, the slope of her shoulders. Every brush of his fingers made her gasp, every sigh escaped her lips, feeding the fire between them. "Elena," he whispered against her lips, "you don't know how long I've waited for this." She responded with a shiver that spoke louder than words. Memories of longing, of nights spent imagining him, flooded back. She had tried to move on, to bury her feelings, but nothing had ever been enough. Not until this night, not until he was here, did she feel complete. Their kisses became frantic, desperate, and for a moment, nothing existed beyond the bridge and the heat of their bodies pressed together. The city lights glimmered around them, the river below reflecting the intensity in their eyes. Elena wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him impossibly closer, as if she could erase the years they had been apart with one embrace. Damien's hand slid lower, his touch electrifying, and Elena's breath hitched. Every nerve ending seemed alive, every sense heightened, until all she could think of was him, his lips, his hands, his presence. She wanted this, needed this, more than she had ever needed anything. "You're mine tonight," Damien whispered, his lips brushing against hers in a slow, searing kiss. "Only mine." "Yes," Elena breathed, surrendering completely. "Only yours." They held each other for a long, suspended moment, two souls intertwined, hearts racing, bodies pressed together against the cold steel of the bridge. The world beyond it ceased to exist, there were no distractions, no obligations, only the fire between them, consuming everything else. And as the wind carried the soft sounds of the city around them, Elena realized that some passions could not be denied. Some connections were too strong, too intense to ignore. And tonight, on this bridge, nothing would hold them back. The night stretched before them, endless and electric, promising more fire, more longing, more of the irresistible pull that had drawn them together again. And neither of them wanted it to end. The bridge was now alive with their presence, every step and every touch echoing against the steel beams as though the structure itself had awakened to their passion. Elena felt her pulse hammering, her breath shallow, her body tingling from every contact with Damien. The city below seemed distant, muted, irrelevant, a background to the storm building between them. Damien's hands roamed over her back, tracing curves, memorizing the feel of her in a way that sent shivers racing along her spine. "I've imagined this moment countless times," he murmured, his lips brushing her ear. "Every day, every night, and now you're here." Elena's hands threaded through his hair, pulling him closer as if she could merge with him completely. "I tried to forget," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly under the weight of longing. "I really did. But no matter what I did, I couldn't." "Good," he said, his lips finding hers again in a kiss that was both demanding and tender. "Because I never stopped thinking about you. Never stopped wanting you. Never stopped needing this us." Her knees weakened at his words. Every syllable, every touch, every whispered confession was like fire, igniting a hunger that had been dormant for far too long. Elena had always thought of passion as fleeting, and dangerous, but this was different. This was all-consuming, a storm she didn't want to escape from. Damien's hands moved lower, exploring her waist, pressing her gently yet insistently against him. She felt the heat of his body searing through her, matching the heat rising within her own. Every brush of his fingers, every shift of his weight, made her pulse spike, making her dizzy with longing. "I've waited so long for this," Damien said between kisses, his voice low and husky. "And now that you're here, I'm not letting go." Elena's head tilted back slightly, surrendering to the sensation, the connection, the magnetic pull that had drawn them together once and now drew them again. I don't want you to," she admitted, her voice trembling with desire. "I don't want this night to end." "Then it won't," he said, capturing her hands in his and pressing them to his chest. "Tonight, the world outside this bridge doesn't exist. It's just you and me." She let herself be enveloped by him, by the intensity of his gaze, the warmth of his body, the heat of his touch. The wind whipped around them, tangling their hair and clothes, but they barely noticed. Every sense was consumed by the other, every thought eclipsed by the fire raging between them. Damien leaned in again, his lips brushing hers in a kiss that was slow, deliberate, and dripping with desire. Elena's hands traced the lines of his face, memorizing every angle, every contour. It was as if they were reclaiming lost time, every second together a fierce reclamation of what had been denied for years. "I can't believe we're here," she whispered against his lips, her voice a mixture of disbelief and need. "After everything, it feels unreal." "Unreal," he echoed, his eyes dark and intense. "This is real. Every touch, every sigh, every heartbeat, it's all real. And I want more. So much more." Their kiss deepened, growing more urgent, more demanding, as if their bodies were unable to contain the tension any longer. Elena pressed herself closer, feeling the hard strength of his chest, the warmth of his embrace, the undeniable connection that refused to be denied. And in that moment, with the city lights twinkling below and the wind swirling around them, they gave in completely. Words became unnecessary. Desire spoke louder than any confession could. Every glance, every brush of skin, every heartbeat shouted the same truth: they were meant to collide, to burn, to consume each other. The bridge, silent witness to countless stories, held its breath as Elena and Damien surrendered to the passion that had waited so long to ignite. And in that fire, in that heat, they both realized something profound: some connections cannot be denied, some flames cannot be extinguished, and some nights will stay with you forever. As they stood there, hearts racing, bodies entwined, Elena knew one thing with absolute certainty: this night, this bridge, this passion, it was only the beginning. The night had deepened, and the bridge seemed to exist in a world apart from the city, suspended between reality and the electric intensity of what was happening between them. Elena's skin tingled wherever Damien touched her, every glance, every whisper fueling a fire that threatened to consume them both. The river below reflected the twinkling city lights, but to Elena, the world beyond the bridge had ceased to exist. Damien's hands roamed her back and shoulders, memorizing every contour, every subtle curve. "You don't know how long I've imagined this," he murmured against her ear, his lips brushing the delicate skin there. "Every day without you felt empty. Every night without you felt like a promise I couldn't keep." Elena shivered at his words. She had tried to forget him, to bury her desire under layers of work, distractions, and obligations, but nothing had sufficed. Nothing had filled the emptiness that his absence had left behind. Now, with him pressed against her, she realized how much she had truly missed him, how much of herself she had lost to time and distance. I never stopped thinking about you either," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "Even when I told myself I was moving on, it wasn't true." Damien's lips curved into a soft, almost predatory smile. "I hoped you felt the same," he whispered, leaning closer so that his forehead rested against hers. "Because tonight, I'm not letting you go. Not again." Elena's hands threaded into his hair, tugging him closer as if she could erase the years they had spent apart with the strength of her touch alone. "Then don't," she breathed, her lips finding his in a kiss that was equal parts desperation and longing. "Don't let go. Not tonight. Not ever." Their kisses grew more urgent, more insistent, each one carrying the weight of years of longing and unspoken desire. Damien pressed her against the railing, his hands exploring the line of her back and waist, every touch sending electricity coursing through her body. Elena's knees nearly gave out as her senses were consumed by him, his warmth, his strength, the undeniable pull between them. "You feel like home," Damien whispered, his lips trailing along her jaw and neck. "Like I've been searching for you my whole life." Elena gasped at the intensity of his touch, her body trembling with need and anticipation. "And you've always been impossible to forget," she admitted, her hands clutching at his shoulders, holding him as if letting go would erase this moment forever. The wind whipped around them, tangling their hair, carrying their shared breaths into the night, but they barely noticed. Every nerve ending burned with sensation, every heartbeat thundering in sync. The bridge, silent witness to countless lives, seemed to hum beneath them, alive with their desire. Damien's eyes darkened with hunger and longing. "I've wanted this for so long," he murmured, his lips brushing hers again. "I've wanted you, like this, tonight, here with me." Elena's body responded instinctively, leaning into him, craving the warmth and pressure of his embrace. "Then take me," she whispered, a mixture of plea and command, surrendering fully to the storm of desire that had been building for years. Damien's hands tightened around her, pulling her impossibly close, as though he could make up for lost time in a single embrace. Their lips met again, urgent, fierce, claiming and reclaiming each other in a collision of passion that left them both breathless. For a long moment, they simply held each other, foreheads touching, hearts racing, breathing in unison. The city lights reflected in their eyes, shimmering like stars caught between desire and reality. Elena realized, with a clarity that made her heart ache, that some connections could not be denied, some flames could not be extinguished, and some nights like this one would stay etched in memory forever. Damien rested his forehead against hers, his thumb brushing lightly over her cheek. "You're mine tonight," he whispered, voice husky with emotion. "And I'm never letting go." Elena smiled softly, her body still trembling with the intensity of the moment. "Then don't," she replied, her voice barely audible. "Tonight, we are unstoppable." And as the wind swirled around them, carrying the sounds of the city below, the bridge seemed to embrace them, holding their passion like a secret, sacred to the two of them alone. Tonight, nothing existed beyond the connection they shared, the fire, the longing, the hunger that had brought them back together. In that suspended moment, Elena understood something profound: some loves are meant to be rediscovered, some passions are meant to be reignited, and some nights are destined to be unforgettable. And tonight, this bridge, this city, this river beneath them, they belonged to Elena and Damien, to the fire that refused to be tamed. The city around them had quieted to a soft hum, the distant sounds of traffic and nightlife fading beneath the intensity of what was happening on the bridge. Elena's heartbeat thundered in her chest, each pulse echoing the electricity flowing between her and Damien. They had crossed lines that once seemed unthinkable, yet neither of them felt regret, only the raw, consuming fire of reunion. Damien held her close, his hands firm yet gentle, grounding her even as the desire between them threatened to pull them into chaos. "Elena," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "do you realize how close we came to losing each other? All those years." His voice trailed off, thick with emotion, and she could see the vulnerability in his dark eyes, hidden beneath the confidence he always carried. "I know," she whispered, her thumb tracing his jawline. "I thought I could move on, but I couldn't. Not really. You were always here, even when you weren't." Damien's lips hovered over hers, close enough for the warmth of his breath to make her shiver. "I need you to understand something," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. Everything between us tonight, it's not just desire. It's us finally finding the truth. We belong here. Together. Always." Elena felt a shiver run through her at his words, a mixture of longing, fear, and overwhelming joy. For years, she had suppressed the truth of her feelings, convincing herself that the past was behind her. But standing here, pressed against him, feeling the heat of his body and the pull of their shared memories, she knew that denial was impossible. "I want that too," she admitted, her lips curving into a small, trembling smile. "I've wanted it for so long." The bridge seemed to hold its breath as Damien pulled her into a slow, searing kiss, one that spoke of years of longing, of stolen moments, of promises never kept until now. Elena melted against him, her hands clutching at his shoulders, her body responding to his touch in ways she had tried to forget but could never resist. They moved together in a rhythm that was almost instinctual, a dance of need and surrender. Damien's hands traced the line of her back, the curve of her waist, igniting sensations that left her breathless. Elena pressed herself against him, every nerve alight with desire, every sense consumed by the fire that had always existed between them. "I don't want to lose this again," Damien whispered against her lips, his hands tightening around her. "Not tonight, not ever. We fight, we resist, we argue, but this, it's real. You're real to me." Tears pricked at the corners of Elena's eyes as she held him close. "I know," she breathed. "And I don't want to. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of wondering. I just want you." Damien's lips curved into a soft, almost reverent smile. "Then it's yours," he murmured, kissing her again, slower this time, savoring the moment, the connection, the truth between them. "All of it? All of me, for you." Elena felt her heart swell with a mixture of relief, joy, and passion. Every hesitation, every fear, every moment of longing had led them here to the bridge, to this night, to each other. The river below reflected the city lights, shimmering like the countless possibilities that stretched ahead, and in that reflection, she saw their story mirrored, fiery, unbroken, unstoppable. They lingered in the embrace, letting the night carry them, letting their hearts speak in a language beyond words. The world outside the bridge had rules, expectations, and time, but here, now, none of it mattered. Only the heat of their bodies, the brush of lips, the shared breaths, and the undeniable truth of their connection. "Elena," Damien whispered one final time, his forehead resting against hers, "we're here. Together. And nothing can take this from us." Elena smiled, feeling the tension and longing that had built over years melt away in the warmth of his embrace. "Together," she echoed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she truly believed it. As the night stretched on, the bridge became a sanctuary, a place where the past, present, and future collided, and Elena knew that no matter what challenges awaited them, this passion, this bond would endure. The first hint of dawn touched the horizon, painting the city in soft hues of rose and gold. The night's intensity still clung to them like a second skin, their breaths mingling, their bodies pressed together on the bridge as if the world itself had shrunk to just the two of them. Elena's heart still raced, her pulse a chaotic rhythm of desire and exhilaration, yet beneath the fire of passion was a profound sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Damien held her close, his lips brushing her temple in quiet reverence. "We made it," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "Through everything, we found each other again." Elena pressed her cheek against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. "It feels unreal," she whispered. "Like this is a dream I never want to wake from." "It's real," he insisted softly, lifting her chin so that their eyes met. "Every second of it. Every kiss, every touch, every look, it's all real. And it's ours." The bridge, which had been a silent witness to countless moments of longing, secrecy, and fleeting encounters, now bore testimony to something more profound, the rekindling of a love that had refused to die, no matter the distance, the years, or the obstacles. Elena smiled, a slow, radiant curve of lips that reflected both relief and desire. "Then let's not waste another moment," she said, her fingers tangling in his hair as she pulled him close again. The kiss that followed was slow at first, a gentle exploration, but soon it deepened, demanding, urgent, a collision of hearts and souls that had been waiting years to merge. Damien's hands roamed over her back and shoulders, memorizing every line, every curve, as if to imprint her onto his very being. Elena's body responded instinctively, leaning into him, pressing closer, as though surrendering completely to the fire that had always existed between them. Every sigh, every heartbeat, every whispered name became a testament to the depth of their connection. "You're mine," Damien whispered between kisses, his voice husky, a mixture of need and devotion. "And I'll never let you go again." Elena trembled against him, letting the weight of the moment wash over her. "And I'm yours," she breathed, her lips curving into a smile that was part passion, part relief, part unwavering trust. "Forever." For a long moment, they simply held each other, letting the world around them fade. The river below glimmered with the reflection of the rising sun, the city stretching into a new day, but on the bridge, time seemed to stand still. It was theirs alone, a space of fire, of memory, of longing fulfilled. Damien traced the line of her jaw with his thumb, gazing at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "We've been given this second chance," he said softly, "and I promise I'll make it last. No regrets. No hesitation. Just us." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, tears of joy, of relief, of a longing finally sated. "I trust you," she whispered. "I've always trusted you." He smiled, leaning down to press a final, lingering kiss to her lips. "Then let's make a promise," he said, his voice low, reverent. "That no matter what comes, no matter what challenges we face, we fight for this. For us." Elena nodded, her forehead resting against his, her body still trembling with the residual heat of the night. "For us," she echoed, sealing the promise in the quiet intimacy of the dawn. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the river and illuminating the bridge in a warm glow, they remained entwined, a living testament to passion, resilience, and the undeniable truth of their love. The city awakened around them, but they were lost to none of it, suspended in a moment of perfection that neither wanted to end. The bridge had been a place of longing, of fire, and of rediscovery. And now, it had become a place of promise, a promise that whatever the world might throw at them, they had found something that could not be taken away, each other. Hand in hand, hearts beating in unison, Elena and Damien stepped back from the railing, finally ready to leave the bridge but carrying the night, the passion, and the bond they had rekindled deep within them. It was more than a moment. It was a beginning. A new chapter forged in fire, desire, and the unshakable truth that some loves are worth waiting for, worth fighting for, and worth returning to, no matter the years lost. And as the first light of morning kissed their faces, they knew this was theirs, completely and irrevocably, and nothing could ever change that.